What's cracking, guys? Bruce Matz here, your host of the show, Metro Scout Fantasy Football, and I've been mock drafting like crazy. I've also been stealing mock drafts off the internet, adding them into mine, trying to collaborate, get me some ADP for you guys to go over. That way, while you're in your rookie drafts, you can use those values to help yourself out. I was trying to get as much as possible. I think I got like 22 drafts. This is a landscape that I've gotten ADP so far. It's SuperFlex, 2 rounds of ADP, and we're going to hit it right now. I have the ADP split up in rounds, players going 101 to 112, so I'm pretty much going to read this off like a mock draft, but on average, this is where the players are coming off the board. I'm going to split them up between round 1 and round 2. After round 1, I'll go over my values, what I feel on some of these players, give you some of my analysis a little bit, then move on to round 2, do the same, and then we're out for the day. So let's get things started with round 1. Here are the players coming off the board in ADP. So at the 101 on average, Breece Hall, New York Jets. At the 102, Kenneth Walker, Seattle Seahawks. At the 103, Garrett Wilson, New York Jets. At the 104, Drake London, Atlanta Falcons. At the 105, Treylon Burks, Tennessee Titans. At 106, Kenny Pickett, Steelers. At the 107, Chris Olave, Saints. At 108, Jameson Williams, Detroit Lions. At the 109, Sky Moore, Kansas City Chiefs. At the 110, Christian Watson, Packers. At the 111, James Cook, Bills. At the 112, Jahan Dotson, Washington Commanders. Starting things off, Breece Hall at the 101, there's no surprise there. He should be the 101 in most drafts, unless he does something crazy like kill some kittens or something. 102, Kenneth Walker, and I'm usually seeing him go all over the board between the 102 and as low. The lowest I've seen was the 106 in a mock, but 102, 103, 104, usually 102, 103 range is usually about his average. 102 for this set. If I ran another set of 20 mocks, he may be like 103 on average, but he's usually right around there. Then after that, or mixed in, depending on what happens, is the big 3, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Treylon Burks. A lot of times you'll see Jameson Williams pop up, and in a lot of drafts I see Jameson Williams ahead of Chris Olave, but there's been some times where Chris Olave got pumped up in some of the drafts. I think on average, I think more times than not, you're going to see Jameson Williams drafted ahead of Chris Olave. I feel like he's going to be valued more in the top 3 as we get further into draft season. Kenny Pickett at the 106 in SuperFlex. This is really due to some drafts he gets drafted higher than expected. Some drafts he falls a little further than that. Usually I see him going 110, 111 range. That seems like the more acceptable area. Maybe 109. 106 is a little high, but there were a few drafts where he got overdrafted that bumped up the ADP a bit. 103, 104, 102-ish. 106 is a little high for me right now still, considering I'm not in love with the quarterback class, but still SuperFlex holds SuperFlex value, and if you're not into what's left on the board, you may want to do that, but that's on you. Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, already talked about that off the board. Usually you see Jameson Williams ahead of him, but the argument to make right now is Chris Olave versus Sky Moore. Sky Moore is getting drafted ahead of Chris Olave. A lot of times, a lot of people are bumping up Sky Moore ahead of Chris Olave, analysts and stuff. I like Sky Moore a lot. I am willing to draft him ahead of Chris Olave due to what we've seen on tape, the metrics, the landing spots, and I just like Sky Moore a lot. I feel like this is the perfect fit for him. I think I'm going to drop a video on Sky Moore versus Chris Olave in a little bit, so you may want to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that one. I'll dig deeper into that Mandela effect for you. But Christian Watson, going in the first round, mainly draft capital, going to the Packers. You're going to see him in the first, early part of the second, somewhere in that range. I've seen him in the second a couple times. I've seen him around the 110, 112 area most of the times. James Cook, last of the Mohicans of the second round running backs. He's going to end up with first round draft capital in a lot of leagues because of that draft capital and him being a running back. Jahan Dotson, 112. I'm seeing him fall in the second round a lot. He gets drafted a little bit higher in 112 a lot of times. That's why he kind of averaged out in this range. Like sometimes you'll see him sneak into the 108, 109, 110. But also I'll see him go at 201, 202, 203. Somewhere around there, so averaged out versus the times where he got drafted a little higher than expected. It kind of lands him in the 112, but that gives us our first round of this draft. A lot of ambiguity here, a lot of differences here, a lot of people shooting their shot, getting their guys earlier than expected. That happens in rookie drafts. People draft their dudes. That pumps up the ADP. If you had more drafts, then things would average out a little bit more. But all in all, you kind of get a good field of values. You got Breece Hall starting things off, then Kenneth Walker, the big wide receivers, and then you pick your poison with the wide receivers after the top guys. Let's move on to round 2. Let's see what they have in store for us in ADP. For the 201 here, we got George Pickens, Steelers, 202, Rachaad White, Bucks, 203, David Bell, Browns, 204, John Mechie, Texans, 205, Wandel Robinson, Giants, 206, Desmond Ritter, Falcons, 207, Trey McBride, Cardinals, 208, Alec Pierce, Colts, 209, Malik Willis, Titans, 210, Isaiah Spiller, Chargers, 211, Brian Robinson, Washington Commanders, 212, Damien Pierce, Texans. So the second round is going to be very ambiguous depending on what league you're in, depending on how your league is valuing these players. This is where things turn into an abyss and guys are just falling off the board. I see Wandel Robinson getting touted as a value a lot in drafts. At 205, considering his draft capital versus production, I can make that argument. I love George Pickens in the second round, but I feel like he's going to be in the first round more than he is in the second round. I'm seeing him in drafts go 111, 112, 110. I see some people shoot their shot on him and go a little higher than that. I've seen him go to 201, 202, 203, 204. Really depends on how the draft goes and who you're drafting with. Rachaad White, running back, pass catching chops, decent draft capital, but not great draft capital. Good backup running back draft capital with upside. 202, you're going to see him go in that early second round range. David Bell, 203, third rounder in a great situation. You're going to see him go in the middle of the second round in a lot of your drafts. John Mechie, decent draft capital, and he's in a situation where he could be seeing snaps early in his career. Already talked about Wandel. Desmond Ritter. We got a mid-round quarterback coming off the board in the middle of the second round. Got some rushing production, and we got a pathway to where he could become the starter in Atlanta. I think this is very risky. I think this is a high price tag to pay for a mid-round quarterback. Usually, mid-round quarterbacks don't hit. Usually, you don't get much out of them. If we're lucky, we'll get one of these mid-round quarterbacks hit for us in Dynasty. That's if we're lucky. But more than likely, these mid-round quarterbacks, they may give us a little production. They may get some starts, but we may not get what we were dreaming of a few weeks ago. Be on the lookout for that. Don't overdraft these guys. Be very careful. Make sure your wide receivers and running backs that you love are off the board before you even think about looking their way. Trey McBride, 207. Decent price tag considering this class got flipped on its head in the draft. Decent price tag for him, and he went to a good situation. Alec Pierce to Cincy to the Colts. Malik Willis, another quarterback coming off the board. 209 is a little better price tag than 206, and I'm also seeing Malik Willis go a little higher in drafts. 201, 202, 112 in SuperFlex. His value is all over the board. People don't know what to make of it. Like I said, make sure your dudes are off the board before you start looking at these mid-round quarterbacks because they are risky still. They don't have the draft capital to keep them pumped up. If they're not hitting in camp, guess what? The team can move on. There's no sunk cost there. Think about those data points when you're looking at these quarterbacks because these teams don't have anything invested in these players really. This is a cheap entry cost to get in on these quarterbacks. If these quarterbacks have a long road in their development and their team are not interested in that, that could be bad for us. That could be bad. These are not quarterbacks that we're used to drafting in SuperFlex. This is not a normal pool for us. Think of that before you start drafting. Willis does have some upside in fantasy. We also have some latter round running backs and wide receivers left on the board. So it's also understandable, but make sure your guys are off the board before you start looking at these quarterbacks. Next is Isaiah Spiller, running back from the Chargers. might get opportunity earlier than expected on a good offense. Draft capital is not there, but at 210, a lot of people are willing to take that dance. I've also seen people draft him a lot higher than that. Early second, mid second, 201, 202, 203, in that area of the draft. So make sure you're not overdrafting these late round guys. And if you got a late round running back on the board, try and get one who has a pathway to opportunity early in their career where you can tell that story to yourself. Okay, if this happens, he's going to get the chance. All it takes is this to happen. I like this guy. I like his profile. Something like that. Brian Robinson, Damien Pierce. All similar scenarios. Damien Pierce is going to a Texans depth chart that's pretty much wide open for the running back. Brian Robinson, third round running back prospect who's going to be sharing the backfield with Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is the incumbent there. Antonio Gibson should be the dude, but they spent a third round on him. Gibson has 2 more years left on his contract. We got to see how that unfolds. Brian Robinson, new third rounder who's got some power to handle a heavy workload. They may want to use that, implement that some, maybe on short yards and goal line. Might be a good guy to get in the latter part of the second round. Would you want to pay too much for him? No, but if you're interested in running backs, you want to shoot your shot on running backs, that may be a guy you want to look at. We have a lot more running backs who are listed in ADP here. We're talking about guys like Tyler Algier who could see an increased role early in their career. Remember, this is not the sexiest class. This class is deep with dudes who's got some specs, but it does not have the talent level compared to previous years. We're not going to have our Jamar Chases. We're not going to have our Justin Jeffersons or Jonathan Taylors. We're going to have some running backs hit a little bit for us. We're going to have some wide receivers hit a little bit for us. We're going to have them do some good things, but don't have your expectations over the moon. We got some good players here. We got a good crop here, but it's not what we're used to from previous years, especially if you're newer to Dynasty Fantasy Football. You've been in rookie drafts these last few years. Every so often, we get a graveyard. Every so often, we have no man's lands in these drafts. We have this year. We have a lot of risk in these drafts, a lot of volatility, a lot of ambiguity, and just be careful. Stick to your process. Stick to the players you like. Don't overdraft players just because of draft capital. Get the guys that you've been keen on, that got draft capital, that went to good situations, and make sure to have fun with it. Let me know what you think about the ADP. Let me know who you're drafting up. I got a rookie mock draft coming at you tomorrow or the next day, so you may want to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that. Every subscription matters. It fuels me to keep pumping out this content. I'm dropping more content than anybody else here on the YouTubes. One-man show, one-man army over here. Hit that up. Again, I want to thank you, though, and I'll catch you next time.